the president could be applying the hunter-gatherer strategy, moving on to plant in the richer soils where it could yield him 2.1 million votes in 2027. So is there a possibility that that Ruto is doing this specifically to try and bolster his numbers in 2027?
This is somebody who went, and the way he likes to put himself out there to show his strength and bravado and how big he is. This is a guy who addressed and made those promises while inside an armored vehicle. He himself was scared of stepping out of the car when he was in Northeastern. You saw how hurried that speech was. He put it out from a vehicle, made promises, promised a road network that will be, I think, the biggest road project in the country, if he does that, and left. All I'm saying is that let's have uniformity throughout the whole country, if we are being honest. I don't want Muslims to go through an extra security aspect when they're getting the IDs. But I don't want somebody to use that as an excuse to try to farm for votes.
We know that in Kenya, individuals of Somali descent have historically faced stringent vetting procedures when applying for national identity cards. And there was a move by the president recently to remove this that was extremely controversial. But I want to give a brief background of vetting, because most Kenyans are not aware or familiar with this, because most other people do not go through this. You know, like it started with the Somali community, and at some point it was spread out to the rest of the Muslim community. So this vetting process, Mika, we are gonna get to you. But the vetting process was established in the 60s following the Shifter insurgency, you know, like a secession conflict where some ethnic Somalis sought to join Somalia. So this is also another part of Kenyan history that I think also a lot of people don't know, because we have an education system that leaves out some very important moments in history. Now, before we got independence, 1963, so the settlers who came to Kenya and the part that was called Kenya, they took the White Highlands and other certain parts of Kenya. So when you look at that border, when Kenya became a colony, because initially the settlers came in, but Kenya officially became a colony in 1920. And at that time, the Kenyan coast was, it was a protectorate, but it was part of the Sultanate of Zanzibar, because the Sultanate of Zanzibar existed until 1964. So the 10-mile strip in the coast was part of that. And then Northeastern Province, what we know today as Northeastern Province, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera, I believe also some parts of Eastern, Upper Eastern, like maybe Marsabit and Isiolo, but I'm not 100% sure where the border was actually drawn. These were referred to as the Northern Frontier Districts, NFD, which were being governed separately. So before we got independence in 1961, there was a referendum that was done. Before we got independence in 1963, there was a referendum done in the Northern Frontier Districts, where the people there were asked by the British a very simple question. Because at that point, there was a process already of giving Kenya independence going on. The question was, do you want to be part of Kenya, or do you want to join your cousins and be part of the greater Somalia? Because remember, Somalia was divided into two. The Somalia that we know today, the number 7 map, the Horn of Africa, the southern part that borders Kenya was under Italian administration. And the northern part, where Hargeisa is, or I think commonly referred to as Somaliland, was under British rule. So it was a mishmash of many things going on. So the British part of Somali and the Italian part of Somali came together to form what's known as Somalia. And then there was the conversation of having that northeastern part of Kenya join Somalia and be the greater Somalia. There was also a part of Ethiopia called Ogaden, that's a Somali province. There was also discussions about that part, which I'm not very privy to. But then the results of that referendum came out and it went against British expectations. 90%, they overwhelmingly decided that they want to join their brothers in Somalia. And I don't know why the British were shocked, because it was natural for people to want to be with a group that with a group of their brothers, the people who are like them. So what ended up happening, because the British did not want to have that strong Greater Somalia, they force-fed the northern frontier districts. It was force-fed into this map that we call Kenya today. And all these shenanigans was happening in Lancaster. And then also there was some shenanigans that happened with a contingent from the coast that went there. Because at that point, the coastal part, they still wanted to be with their brothers in Zanzibar, with the Sultanate of Zanzibar, because culturally they were very aligned. But there was some details that I cannot go through today because it's a very long and winding story. But basically what ended up happening is that the Kenyan coast was also forced into Kenya. In fact, if you look at the treaty that was signed during independence, that's when the 10-mile strip and the islands of Lamu and those other parts became part of Kenya. And all this was force-feeding. So there was resistance that came from the northern frontier districts because they did not want to join Kenya. And that's what was referred to as the shifter wars. Yeah. So those shifter wars is what initiated this process called vetting that was established in the 60s because there was a group of people there who were being referred to as secessionists, where there were people who were still seeking to join Somalia. So a lot of people there, when it started, it was just a requirement for applicants to undergo a thorough scrutiny by security committees comprising of officials from National Intelligence Service, local chiefs, police, and elders. Applicants were often asked to provide extensive documentation and answer detailed questions about their lineage and place of birth. Critics have long argued that this process was discriminatory, leading to delays, denials, and significant challenges for many ethnic Somalis in obtaining essential identification. So that generation that wanted to secede, it died off, but this thing continued. It continued, and it was extended to other communities. And I know there's this argument, there's an apologist argument that comes out that says the vetting happens in all border communities. Yes, there's some level of it that happens, but none of it happens like the way it's done to the Somali community and to Muslim communities. Within the Somali community, and even with a lot of Muslim communities in the coast, there was a point when it was normal to have someone who's 24, 25 years old, still running after an ID. These are people who are born in Kenya. They have a Kenyan birth certificate. They went through a Kenyan education. They have a Kenyan school living certificate, but you're still being asked to produce a birth certificate of your grandfather. Imagine if you're born in the 80s, your grandfather, if you're born, for example, in 1980, your grandfather was born in 1899. Where are you getting that birth certificate? Who was giving out birth certificates in 1899 when people were being born? Now, I understand the anxiety that people have because the president, William Ruto, who is known to be a liar, who is known to be a manipulator, and who's known to be a thief. he came and said that this process is coming to an end.
Kasongo.
And I think the things that preceded it are what got people jittery. Because I think it was reported, I want to say it was by, I don't know whether it's a Daily Nation or the Standard. Let me confirm that here and just read what they said. So it says, it started with the court invalidating 2019 census results for Garissa, Mandera, and Wajir counties. Then President Ruto scrapped vetting for northeastern Kenya residents while applying for IDs and later opened a new registration center in Garissa. Analysts opined that the president could be applying the hunter-gatherer strategy, moving on to plant in the richer soils where it could yield him 2.1 million votes in 2027. So is there a possibility that that Ruto is doing this specifically to try and bolster his numbers in 2027? 100%. You know, like I mean, there's no other explanation on why he's doing this and when he's doing this. I don't know that this is a trump card that he was holding close to his chest and wanted to use it at some point. But yeah, so there's two issues here. There's an issue of community for so many years, for over 60 years since independence, being unfairly vetted to get a document that they legitimately deserve. And then there's the other issue of a president trying to do this so that he can bolster his numbers because he's lost significant support in the rest of Kenya. And at this point, I open up the floor. I'm going to start with you, Mika, because Mika had something that he wanted to say. Twende kazi, Mika.
No, thank you for that breakdown. Now, one thing I wanted to say was that I come from a border district, what was used to call the border district. And we have the unfortunate privilege of when we apply for ID, hatuwezi apply ID Nairobi, lazima urudi ushago na ufanywe hiyo vetting.
Who does the vetting?
Vetting inafanywa kwa chief. Kwanza unachukua kale ka form ulikuwa na fill.
Yes.
Unaenda kwa mzee wa kijiji, ana sign, mzee wa kijiji, unaenda kwa sub chief, ana sign, unatoka kwa sub chief, alafu unaenda kwa chief. Alafu hiyo siku kwa DO hapo kuna siku za vetting. Unakaa hivi, unaulizwa maswali, unaishi wapi, umetoka boma gani, kuna mzee wa kijiji hapo wenu, watu wanaulizwa maswali about the area, kama unajua area nini. That's what they used to do for the vetting. So most of us who come from border districts, tulikuwa tuwezi chukulia ID Nairobi, lazima uende ushago ufanye hizo vetting, which has been there. Now, and that's the reason why you see so many Kenyans are perplexed about it, because ukiangalia watu wengi wenye wanakonsideriwa kuwa kwa border districts, it's a lot, because it goes from Nyanza, kuna areas that border Tanzania, Western, Rift Valley, kuna areas that border Uganda, Sudan. Watu wa coast wanaconsideriwa, I think pia wanaconsideriwa kwa sababu Malindi wana border Somali, right, na Lamu.
Malindi haija border Somali. Maybe sasa ukifika uko side za Lamu sasa.
Yeah, but ukipanda na hiyo njia nini, like ukienda Boni Forest, border is go straight to Somali. So that hiyo yote ni border district. Those are wote pia walikuwa wanafanywa vetting. So the idea of vetting has been there. So when you come and say that just one particular region, right, are the ones who unaenda kutoa hiyo vetting, alisema hii voting tutatoa eneo yetu, and then you open a registration
a new center.
Let's say something like an immigration office there, where the only other place that you have this thing is Nairobi, Mombasa, na Kisumu. again, it turns around and looks suspicious.
Of course.
Because if you look at the infrastructure of that region to support to kusema kuna that huge number of people, it doesn't justify you opening an immigration service center over there. So if you are gonna get rid of vetting, get rid of vetting for the whole country. All the border districts zote toa vetting, wasitoa vetting area moja, toa vetting kila mahali. If you're going to put people registration services and immigration services, put them everywhere in the country. Make it all fair game. And then another thing that actually makes it worse for him is the fact that all the security apparatus zote zinashikiliwa na Somali. So he's been seen like he's wooing the Somali community and trying to get together with them, like to bring them in. This is somebody who went, and the way he likes to put himself out there to show his strength and bravado and how big he is. This is a guy who addressed and made those promises while inside an armored vehicle. He himself was scared of stepping out of the car when he was in Northeastern. You saw how hurried that speech was. He put it out from a vehicle, made promises, promised a road network that will be, I think, the biggest road project in the country, if he does that, and left. I will have a problem with that. So for me, if Ruto was genuinely wanting to abolish vetting, he should abolish vetting the whole country, not just one area.
Okay, so very, very good points. You brought in Nika, and we're gonna go back to the studio. Tumsikie Unomike na Omosh. Now, I think what I want people to understand, there is a vetting of umetoka kijiji gani, ile a local chief. I believe, like most people, like across the country go through that. So the part that people don't get, is and this is the extra vetting that's done to Somalis and people who are from Muslim communities, where I don't know whether it would be normal to see, because there was a point when it was very normal for a 24, 25-year-old to be still running after an ID. Now, the reason why, like that was specifically happening in those communities is because the vetting that was being done in there was won by
Omosh, looks like
Ali amepotea.
I think.
But I think I understand what he wanted to say. He wanted to say that ile ulikuwa
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, continue.
Okay, all right, sawa. I think you hapo ni bundles za JW Marriott. But do I say? But what was I saying again? So there was there was that
the
issue
man was
of,
chasing the ID.
Yes, because
Where's
what
your
was
video?
happening is that unaambiwa vetting yako, because think about this. I don't know how many of you were asked for your grandfather's ID. There are people who are being asked for their great grandfather's ID.
Wapi video yako?
Me personally,
Okay, so
when I went to get my ID in Kibra, for some reason, they decided that I was from the Comoros Islands. For some strange reason, they decided I was from the Comoros Islands, na Ndoivo. So I had to go through an extra process. And now the problem is most of the people who don't have someone who can assist them want a Kabila ID. And it's not only IDs, it's extended to passports too. Getting passports had been a very, very big issue for people who are in those Muslim communities. So the vetting that was happening for people in Northeastern Province and for people who are coming from Muslim communities was a very different kind of vetting. And eventually, initially ilikuwa ni hiyo NIS, but eventually it became an extortion scheme.
Ali,
It became an
video.
extortion.
Ali, we can't see you. We can't see you, boss.
No, my video is
not
on. So I don't know.
Finya nini ya video. Finya.
So kuna
click on it. Click on your video icon.
No, the video is on, but I think the screen that you guys are showing ni ile screen iko kwa studio. Because kuna screen mbili. Mine is showing.
Ali.
Yeah.
Press your finya camera icon yako na nini.
Okay, now I've disconnected it.
Connect it again.
Okay, now I've reconnected it. So,
you know,
I don't know.
No, there's no video over here.
But Ali,
carry on.
When you go back to the vetting conversation,
now he shows up.
Frozen.
I think he's in that Disney. Mika, continue, Mika.
No, my side is not frozen. My side is
75% ya nani ya bando lake, so
yeah.
That's why.
JDW Marriott, my friends.
Mika, carry on. Let him.
No, I was saying when you go back to the vetting conversation, as in, and what I was saying, like with the vetting, I know you were told to. There was that you were told to come with your parents' ID. Kuna watu wengine who didn't have that, then you'll have to be asked to go to bring other people. Like I understand when ukisema hiyo ya when you're saying the Muslim vetting was being taken extra because a lot of people out of corruption was a way to get money, and especially with the influx of refugees in Nairobi, Ethiopian or Somali, it was easier for them to use that to kusumbua watu na kudepto. And I get that, but then there was, I've seen somebody apply for an ID in Nairobi, and I've seen somebody apply for an ID in Butula, in Busia. And I can tell you, Ali, hata kwetu ushago kuna watu wana ma-ID kwa sababu ni stress. By the mere fact that ulikuwa unaambiwa, how can you prove wewe si mtu wa Uganda? Because remember that whole region, Wajaluo, Waluya, Waganda, wameoana, wanashare majina.
Yeah.
We've all intermarried, we're together, tuko hivi. Like it's just there. The border is open. Mimi nikiamua sahi naweza piga raundi nitoke Mnduki mpaka Eugene nirudi. Nipige mbio niingie Siaya nirudi. Like it's so you go everywhere. So there was always that hizo maswali utaulizwa, and it was not that it was an easy vetting that was just supposed to be easier, that you're going to be done. So I don't know if it's because of corruption or I don't know if it's because of national security that was strict, but for me, all I'm saying is that let's have uniformity throughout the whole country, if we are being honest. I don't want Muslims to go through an extra security aspect when they're getting the IDs. But I don't want somebody to use that as an excuse to try to farm for votes.